Growing up as a young woman, marriage summed up all my romantic dreams. I desired to marry and have children. I believe marriage would facilitate this. I just had to wait for Prince Charming to come along, fall in love, and then voila, married. So, is marriage cracked up as it is all meant to be? What does marriage mean? To some, marriage is to meet social and economic needs, while to others it remains family on what they believe. It has been a strategic tool to build trade, create or maintain wealth, and diplomatic relationships. Then it shifted along the years to societal influences on culture. For this documentary series, my goal is to discover the purpose of marriage. I believe if there's no purpose, it is subject to abuse. I invite you, the viewer, to come along with me. I will be having conversations with theologians, therapists, Christian leaders, single people, older and young married couples to obtain their views on marriage. Let me take you to Nigeria, where you can understand my culture, where I came from, and where I got most of my ideas, of my knowledge on marriage from. Come with me. My first experience of marriage in Nigeria was not particularly wholesome. My parents, yes, they were committed to their marriage, but I wasn't particularly impressed with what I see. And I wasn't going to let my own relationship mirror theirs. My father was loving, he loved us as children. My mother was dedicated, but I didn't see much romance. So I just thought, yeah, this is not going to work. However, I think the only couple that mirrored the idea of marriage were a particular couple that lived in my neighborhood. They were my friends. I think the wife was my friend's cousin. She lived with them. So I used to go to their house every now and then, and I used to see them display their love for each other. You see the wife on the sofa with the husband's head on his lap, and I used to think, oh, this is brilliant. I'd love to have this one day. But unfortunately, they moved away. There were rumors that the relationship was falling apart because the wife was having difficulty in conceiving. So that was that. This is Asokoro in the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja, Nigeria. I am on the quest to find out what the people think of marriage. Is marriage still important? Is it relevant? Let's find out.
Marriage is a consummation of two personalities. In our African society today, we see it as two ethnic groups coming together to be one. When you look at it from the traditional setting, you'll see people coming together from other tribes to be one. Then when you come to the religious setting, we see it as a man and a wife coming together, and they two become one flesh, according to the Holy Book. That is the Bible.
Marriage for me, it's one thing that complements a woman. So for me, I see marriage is very important because for a woman to be a woman, you need a man by your side to support you. So for me, at the opinion, I stand to say that marriage is very important for a woman because it helps you to build you up. And you need a man to be at your side to be able to build you up. You can't do it alone as a woman. You need a man that will show you to that vision you want. If you have a vision, you need a man that will show you to that vision you have as a woman. So for me, at the opinion, I support marriage for every woman.
I think marriage is an institution ordained by God, and is a good thing. That's why the Bible said that one should leave his or her parent and then cleave to his wife, and then they become one.
Marriage is good for person to marry and settle in one place.
I'm going to see Reverend Catherine Jinadu. She's the wife of the General Overseer of the New Covenant Church. She's the president and founder of the Covenant Women International and founder of Liberty, Making People Free. She's been married for 56 years now, and she's my mentor. I call her Mom. Morning, Mom.
Wow, you're looking lovely. How are you?
I'm great, Mommy. Good to see you. Thank you, Lord, for having us.
You.
This is a lovely plant for you.
Oh, wow, thank you.
What are you doing, Mom?
I'm just picking up some weeds.
Okay.
Voila. They stick to you.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. It was a friend of mine who used to, who said once before that when I said the grass is not always greener on the other side of town, and she said, if the grass is greener on the other side of town, they must have been doing something good to make the grass green. And I quite agree.
Wow, that's amazing.
It wasn't until recently when we landscaped our garden that we realized it took a lot out of us to make it really beautiful. We have to water the lawn regularly. We have to prune. We have to cut. We have to go to the garden center and get new flowers for the season. So it takes a lot to have a beautiful garden, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
So you have to tend it. You have to keep it. You need to dress it to make it beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that doesn't matter that marriage requires work. If we want something beautiful, we have to work at it.
I guess it's a
marriage,
lot of work.
Yeah, marriage requires work. It requires commitment.
Actually, I enjoy gardening, so marriage can be enjoyable.
Yeah, it can. It's good hard work.
Yeah.
Because you can see the reward at the end of it.
And you're out in the fresh air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your own words, what is marriage, ma'am?
Can I cheat?
Go ahead.
I cheat and read from the prayer book.
Okay.
Because I think it says it so much better than I could do. But I'll start by saying marriage is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A very good idea. And I would also say that it's not my idea, it's God's idea. But I think this says it all. It gives 3 reasons. And it says it's the marriage ceremony, and it's from the Book of Common Prayer written in 1662 by Archbishop Cranmer, and it gives the reasons for marriage, and it's headed the form of the solemnization of holy matrimony.
Holy.
So the first thing is it's holy, and it says it's an honourable estate instituted by God in the time of man's innocence, signifying unto us a mystical union that is between Christ and his church, which holy estate Christ adorned and beautified with his presence in the birth miracle he wrought at Cana of Galilee. It's commended by Paul to be honourable among all men, and is not to be enterprised by any unadvisedly, lightly, wantonly, to satisfy men's carnal lusts and appetites, but reverently, with understanding, discreetly, advisedly, soberly, in the fear of God, duly considering the causes for which matrimony was ordained. Number 1, it was ordained for the procreation of children, to be brought up in the fear and nurture of the Lord, to the praise of his holy name. Secondly, it was ordained for a remedy against sin, to avoid fornication, that such persons that might not have the gift of continency might marry and keep themselves undefiled members of Christ's body. Thirdly, it was ordained for the mutual society, help and comfort that the one ought to have for the other, both in prosperity and in adversity, into which holy estate, this is about the people about to be married, these 2 persons now come to be joined.
Well, God, we can't talk about marriage without actually talking about God. Okay. So Genesis chapter 1 introduces us to marriage. You would notice that God actually made things before he brought Adam into the world. And I was having a discussion with my wife about this a few days ago, and said, suddenly realized that God made everything very good. And then brought Adam in, brought Eve in. So it was his idea, consistent with his nature, that God is good. He did not bring man in, bring woman in before he started creating that which was good. So he actually made everything good, very good, and then brought Adam and Eve in. So it was his idea to bring Adam and Eve in, and he had a plan for them. And you see that in chapter 1, verse 26, and then you go on to chapter 20, verse 28, where it talks about them. Some translations use the word subdue, and he said they should have dominion. If you read the text the way it is in the Masoretic, not Masoretic text, because the Masoretes added the dots to the Hebrew, you see the word viyadu in verse 26, which is translated as dominion. But the word actually has two words. You see the word yarad and the word rada. Yarad means to descend. So the rabbis came to the conclusion that it actually means a conditional kind of dominion, where you know. So it was a very good thing that God did for man and Adam and Eve. And then you come to verse 28, you see the word subdue. And the word subdue actually meant to cultivate. Around the 15th century, it was Miles Coverdale who introduced the word subdue to the English Bible. And so you see God making them, giving them the grace, the wisdom to be productive. So it says subdue, cultivate the earth. So there's, he didn't just say the man alone, so the woman alone. So there's productivity built into it. Now you come to chapter 2, verse 8, you begin to see a kind of a deeper understanding where God said in verse 18 that the man wasn't good for him to be alone. But if you read the Hebrew text, it says this man, this particular man, is not good for this one to be alone. Now, that's good for us to know, because not every man must marry. Because Christologically, that is looking at it from the perspective of Christ, you can see that he actually said that some people will be eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom. So that kind of helps with that kind of, you say maybe that would be interpretation, understanding. And then he says, he was going to make a woman, a helpmate, Isa Kinegdo. So the word Isa, we're told, is like a military term. And so I personally see the woman in that relationship as, it's a ministry. Marriage is kind of a ministry for a woman, because you're there representing God. It's a military term. She's there fighting some battles, and the man can't fight. So if we see it that way, you can begin to build this picture of what marriage is. I can reflect on my own kind of marriage, and I can say that there are some things I couldn't actually solve myself, and my wife was just there. It was just like the right person to take care of that problem. Then you then come to go further to read as you go down chapter 2, and then God says to the man that therefore shall you see the word there that was Adam says that shall the man leave his father and mother. Again, who is this man? Who is this biblical man? Not just any man, but who is this biblical man? Because when he says he should leave, it means you leave. There's one entity formed there, and then he goes on to cleave. It's a different Hebrew word, and it's not just about having relationship. What I mean relationship. So marriage is so that the sin is not committed. That's part of what it means. But beyond that, it means something deeper. That's stage 2 of this relationship with this marriage from the way I see it. And then the main thing is that it says you should become one flesh, echad, one flesh. So when you leave one, you're not autonomous in that sense. You're going towards some a goal, moving towards a goal. You cleave in order to become echad, one. So marriage is not, in my opinion, it started with God and He's got His blueprint. And I've also said this, that you imagine God asking a couple, married man, married woman, okay, you were married in the world. Did you know that my goal, my purpose for marriage is for you to become a heart one? Did you achieve that goal? It's not about building house here, building house there. That's part of it, but the main thing is where's that oneness? That's a heart, two of you becoming one. And the biblical man is normally asked, my son asked me a question, he said that, just the eve of his marriage, said that, or his wedding, he said that, am I a man? Because I've always emphasized that the biblical man is a man who has been discipled by his father. And he's learned a lot from his mother. So I actually brought a book written by a Jewish rabbi, where he wrote about children being disciples of parents. So a child has been discipled, and the child becomes a disciple of the parent.
Wow. You go for it.
I think my definition of marriage would just be, and I'll look at it from both the spiritual person's perspective, and then I'll look at it from a layman's perspective. Because if we're looking at marriage, it's totally different from cohabitation. So from a spiritual person's perspective, I would say marriage is the expression of God's love demonstrated to another person.
Expression of God's love demonstrated to
another person. Because there's no one that gets on your nerves. There's no one that knows your weakness. There's no one that knows how vulnerable you are as the person that is closest to you. As a pastor, as a minister, I can put up appearances on the stage. People don't know what I struggle with. But the person that knows me more than anyone is my wife. Now, the way I can demonstrate God's love, the way God can trust me to love other people, is looking at how I've managed to demonstrate that God's love to the person that is in my life. Now, when I met my wife, I thought I was doing well. I had a job. I was doing well. So it wasn't for lack, or maybe I was in a bad place, but I knew something was missing. So for me, the definition of marriage is the expression of God's love demonstrated to another person. And it's just that completeness. But if I were to speak like a lay person, I would say marriage is that place where you are brought face to face with your challenges and with your weakness. That is where I used to say I never knew I had problem with anger until I got married. And I used to think I was a well-behaved person. I was a youth leader in church. So I didn't know I had a problem with anger until I got married. So marriage brings you face to face with the reality of who you are. And from there, you can then start to ask God to work on you and to work through you. That would be my interpretation of it.
What about you?
I think my interpretation of marriage, which is what I wanted way from, as a young person before marriage, is a place of spiritual safety, a place of emotional support, a place of, material fulfillment and, living large. And a place of, intimacy. Someone I can share intimacy with. I think that was what we were talking about this morning. And that's when my husband was saying that a place where you could have intimacy without being tempted.
Intimacy, safety.
Intimacy, safety. So for me, those four things are the essence of marriage, which you can only get in marriage. You can try in friendship, you can try in other ways, but the place where it all comes together in one, it's in marriage.
The main thing, what I've also always believed is you need to pray as a Christian. looking at this from the perspective of Christian, I believe that you need to pray to ask God, because it's a major step. It's a major decision. It's not something you enter into because lady looks beautiful, a man looks handsome, he's got money, parents are nice, and so on. It's not that. It's you're asking God, God, what's your will for me in this world? Then he tells you, guides you. If you're a child of God, of course he speaks. That's why we pray. He guides you to say, well, this is who you should marry. So I think what you're trying to say is, in light of contemporary understanding of marriage, how can we, Christians deal with this, get into marriage, and how should we do it? Yes, the first, in my opinion, my conviction is that everybody should pray. When you pray, then God tells you who you should marry. So that is number one step for me.
So, in other words, you're saying that God does not see the way man sees.
I do, yes, I agree. He says so himself that he doesn't see the way say it. That's true.
So, in other words, you're saying that it is God who chooses for us.
He can choose if you ask him to choose for you.
If you ask him to choose for you.
And that's where prayer comes in.
Does having God choose for you, is that a recipe for a good marriage?
Well, you have to work things out, because again, when God chooses for you, you have your own responsibility. I've just gone through Proverbs chapter 31. Very fascinating book chapter. And you go through the chapter and you begin to see from verse 1, it describes the role of a mother. And then that looks back to Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8, where it talks about the Torah of a mother. So a mother is a person who speaks. It's a gift. So some men say, well, she talks too much, but it's a gift. And then she's meant to use that gift in the family. And then you come to chapter 30, verse 9 of it, and then those kind of expands, tells you why. Then you come to Proverbs chapter 31, and then it starts telling you from the first few verses you read, this is what I told you in chapter 1. Can you see a fulfillment of it? And so on. So, yes, I would say that we individuals have responsibilities. A man has a responsibility as the husband to make it work, because the Eshet Kayil, which is the virtuous woman described in Proverbs 31. If you read it carefully, if her husband kind of did not allow her to express herself, she wouldn't be. So it's quiet about it, but later, towards the end, it starts talking about her husband. So you can see this unity, kind of a partnership in marriage. So to make it work, you have to then allow it and then follow God's blueprint, because even in marriage, God still has his own blueprint, where he expects a person to follow his blueprints, his commandments, that Hebrew Bible would probably say mitzvah in the singular, mitzvot in the plural, the God's principles for living. So if a person follows that, then you will. And then you need Proverbs 14:1, very important. It talks about wisdom in marriage. That is, the Hebrew is chokhmah. You need chokhmah for marriage. So, and I kind of concluded that every man who wants to marry should tell the lady, please go and spend 1 week somewhere and pray to get wisdom for marriage, because if she doesn't, the first week she's going to make mistakes, and the mistakes could be expensive. So yes, it's a joint responsibility. Yes, pray to God, but at the same time, work together to make it work.
It tests us, and we have to learn how. It's a bit like two pieces of a jigsaw. We have to learn how to fit, and it can bring out the best in us. It can bring out the worst in us. there's so many things we could say about it. So it's an exercise of love. We learn how to love one another. And I remember, I don't know if you want me to go into this, but I once had an interview with God, and he told me that I didn't love my husband because I was complaining to God about him. And immediately I heard the Holy Spirit say, you don't love him. And of course I argued. I said, of course I love him. And the Holy Spirit said, you don't know anything about agape love, the love that bears all things, the love that believes all things, the love that hopes all things, the love that endures all things, the love that never ends. And he kind of really read the riot act to me. He said, you just don't have that. You have filio, which is the companionship part of marriage. We're good friends. You have eros, which is the sexual part, which is really good fun. But he said, you don't know anything about laying down your life for the other person. So one of the purposes of marriage is to learn how to lay down our life for the other.
Emotional support, spiritual safety, material fulfillment, and intimacy. Safety and intimacy.
Yeah, then we talk about the part of the benefits that for us that marriage has brought into our lives is resourcefulness.
Yeah.
So,
through those 4 things.
It's made us more resourceful. So she's bringing skills, she's bringing enablement.
Skills that I don't have, you have. Skills that you don't have, I have it. So it makes us look like we've got it all together.
But I think somebody may ask the question, do I have to be married to actually have that?
Yeah.
Because what about if I'm just cohabiting with someone?
Somebody, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, how does that differ? But the way I will answer that person is the fact that if I'm cohabiting with you, I don't have a sense of accountability
to you to give you that.
If I found somebody else that offers me maybe a better package, maybe better beauty, better better affection, or better listening ears, I could walk with the person. There's nothing tying me to you. That's the limit and the dysfunction of cohabitation. I could walk anytime. I'm not tied to anything. But in marriage, I have come to recognize that I am accountable. It's no longer about myself now. So I think that's one edge, and that's where marriage is way better, in the sense that there's a sense of accountability. There is a sense of, I am in this and I'm willing to make this work. And that's what we found.
And I think that, it's only in marriage that you can produce those fruits that you get, those resources, those resourcefulness. And even though you can get it anywhere else, but you cannot get productive in them as you would have in marriage. There is a blessing, there is a grace that surrounds the life of 2 married people who are committed to work together. It's only found in marriage. You can try other places, but you're splitting yourself in many places. But it's a place where you can really say, I am a whole person. Marriage brings wholeness. And wholeness emotionally, wholeness spiritually, wholeness maritally, and wholeness in intimacy. And I know that people do go through a situation whereby they feel they're married, but they still feel lonely. They still feel they don't have that wholeness in marriage. But that's not what God planned from the beginning. That's not God's plan for that marriage. So if there's any couple listening right now that is feeling that they don't have that wholeness, they feel lonely, they feel lost, there's no intimacy, there's no connection, I want to encourage you to find it, because it is in God. What God has planned for you is for every couple to enjoy marriage, not to endure marriage. So,
in the sense that when you're single, you kind of wish you're maybe taken or in a relationship or married. And when I speak to my married friends, they kind of wish they have some of the things that comes with being single. So it's a case of trying to make the most of, where I am, my status, and I believe also scripture says if you're married, then your number one loyalty is to your spouse. So, that changes everything. So I feel like me being where I am now, it's where God wants me to be at this time. So the least I could do is probably just make the most of it and see how, I can bring glory to Him whilst I'm still, in this status per se. So yeah, I'd say it's a bit mixed and quite interesting, but it's kind of fun not to be able to, worry about someone else and just go about your business, I'd say. Yeah.
It seems as if you are having fun as a single person. So are you looking forward to getting married at all?
Eventually, because I think, at the end of the day, we are supposed to be fruitful and multiply and, replenish the earth and things. So eventually, yeah, it's something I'm looking forward to. But until then, I just have to, make do what I have. But yeah, I think, it would be the idea of getting married, it always crosses my mind. But just, I'm not there yet.
You mentioned something like fruitful and procreate, but I'm sure that is not the main reason why you want to get married. So why would you want to get married?
Right. I think it would be good to look at the purpose of marriage in the first place. So why did God ordain it? So I think it's an institution ordained by God. And the purpose of it, I believe, is to shape in the future generation. So if we are to be fruitful and to multiply, then within the godly institution that's ordained, you're more likely to be able to influence the future generation. So obviously that's just one aspect of it. But I think overall, my marriage, the way I look at it is, it benefits both people in the institution. However, I think the focus would be like to shaping the generation. That's what I think in a way.
So what does love have anything to do with it at all?
Yes, I mean, marriage has benefits to it. So I think both parties benefit from it socially, because as human beings, we are social beings. So marriage, removes the case of where someone is just basically just isolated. No one's an island. So marriage gives that aspect, the social elements to it. So, okay, that's one aspect. And then depending on individuals' individual goals and aspirations, I believe it also gives like collaboration and, partnership and things like that. So love ultimately is the reason why some people get married, and people get married for different reasons. You could get married because your girlfriend's father is a billionaire, Rishi Sunak, for instance. So, people get married for so many reasons. But I think ultimately love would be the thing to learn, because wherever the people involved or the parties involved are doing in the relationship is just a mirror of each other. They reflect each other. So I guess love is just the rules that bind them together. That's what I think.
House.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You like it with honey, yeah?
Yeah, I like honey.
Some of us prefer
That reminds
some of
me.
us are coffee people.
Yeah, you're coffee.
Aye.
You're coffee. Okay.
And
I'm tea. I used to think tea was an insipid brew until I started living in England. And it used to be coffee, and then I become a changed, and it's tea in the morning, tea in the afternoon, and tea before going to bed. I just remember you being a church girl that you are. How easy was it? How easy was it to have intimacy, sex when you got married?
Oh my God, I didn't see that one coming.
Getting hot in here.
Yeah, the hot water. Oh my God. I think the first night was very difficult because we decided we're gonna wait until to have sex before marriage. So we wouldn't have sex before marriage. So obviously the first night was my experience, but thankfully my husband was vastly experienced.
I want to pick it on that. Vastly experienced, but that's something that has to come. Isn't that a double standard? It is a double standard. I've always thought that is a double standard, that maybe you still have to bring some sort of experience whereby the girl is supposed to be chased.
Exactly.
I'm very, very not happy with that.
With that double standard.
That double standard I'm not happy with.
Well,
so how did you overcome that? You were very gentle with her, I would think.
I think one other thing that we probably, the fact that we decided to wait, it wasn't without its challenges.
Yeah.
Because contrary to, because I was not brought up in a pastor's house, and I actually became a converted believer at age 26. So this was, at age 26. So as you can imagine, I've been to university, I've lived some not to person life.
Yes,
exactly. So now meeting someone who's totally different, her mindset, her moral compass, absolutely totally different from mine. So it was challenging, and I realized the fact that I was vulnerable. So that was why I made the expression that at this point in time, I'm not afraid of temptation. So I realized at that point I was vulnerable because of my exposure. So number one, I was asking God for help so that I would be able to cope with the situation, with the challenge, and so that I would not ruin our relationship. So, and I think that really we're also very sensible with things that we didn't get to. There are certain things we will not get into because we know this will lead us into trouble. So, but now fast forwarding that to us now, they getting married, and I realized that my wife did not have that kind of experience that I had.
Oh, okay. All right, okay.
So,
but don't worry.
And we realized the important role that sexual intimacy that it plays in marriage. One of the things that makes, because Proverbs 5 talks about you drinking from your own cistern, talks about you enjoying, and Solomon was very graphic about the way he described it.
His breast will satisfy
Exactly.
you.
So we decided that we want to make our marriage a place of safety, where we can both be intimately safe and will not be afraid of anything from outside. Now, we were open we talked about sex the same way we talk about finance. We talked about what is it that you don't like, what is it that you like. Within anything that is godly, within anything that is not weird, we will do it. But it's always about finding out, am I making you happy? In this?
Are you touching me in the right places?
Exactly. So we ask questions. Where would you like me to touch you? Does that please you? Does that make you? Is that more erotic than the other ones? So we weren't just our father
change position.
No, we go for it. We go for any position wherever it is, and
kitchen, bathroom, stairs.
I think definitely marriage is relevant, definitely. And I think, first of all, just basically came back to what Taya said in terms of being a Christian there. It's ordained by God. He wanted us to be together. There's Adam and Eve. There's the marriage between, Jesus and the church. So if you have to follow in his steps as born again Christians, that doesn't come without any question. And I reference that, and I actually do see a lot of women who do that, because nowadays the lines are blurred as well in terms of men and women and their roles. But the benefits are some of the things that Ty has said as well, in terms of the commitment that one makes in front of God makes marriage become one that you fight for. And the throwaway culture that we have today gets removed when you get married and you make that commitment. You're going to fight hard to work at this. You want to thrive at this, and not survive it. There are those benefits there. One would argue that there's security in you don't have to be married to get financial security or security of having someone there. One would argue that, but I feel that in marriage, again, as a Christian, there's just, it takes away various thoughts that one would have that's taken care of it, because you're secure, and that element is not one that you would worry about. There's some financial benefits to it as well, and just to know that you have somebody to offer you support, encourage you, see you at your worst and see you through your best. I think those are things that I would never change my mind about, actually.
So would you classify your marriage as successful?
So when you say successful, it provides this element of finality, as if we're done. There's no work to be done here. But I think Tayo's talked about not being complacent. So we're happily married. We have our challenges. It's successful in the sense that we have learned the tools that we need to get over some of those challenges. And I'm sure there'll be newer challenges that will come, and we need again to equip ourselves with more tools. So we have become successful at recognizing that we do need to prioritize one another, and recognizing that this is a challenge. Let's knuckle down together and find solutions. So it's successful in that respect, most definitely. But we have to keep on working, because if we're complacent, then things fall apart.
I think everybody needs somebody. It's honestly not an easy thing doing things on your own. Like, for example, I live in a 2-bedroom flat. Sometimes it does get lonely, but I try not to think that far, but sometimes it does get a bit boring. And I do think for a lot of people in my generation, they feel like marriage isn't the one for them. Some of them may think it's a contract, if time goes on and it leads to divorce, all the assets and everything, some of them really genuinely think it's a contract that doesn't actually benefit them, but benefits the one with the children, for example, or the one that earns more, and for that reason, I think a lot of people just don't desire to be married, or they will take their time later down the line before they decide they want to get married. Whereas for a lot of women, we want to be married because they want that foundation, that protection for their children. They don't want to be introducing their children to all kinds of different things compared to those that are not married. I hope that makes sense. And also, you don't want to get with someone that would, for example, impregnate you and then he disappears. Do you know what I mean? Like, the American system has the whole, the father has to pay towards the child regardless. Whereas here, it's not that enforced. So yeah, I think it really just depends. But I think for this generation, the desire, it's not as popular.
Well, I don't think that marriage is for everyone, for some of the reasons that you and I have talked about, because marriage is a big investment in another person. And we have to be willing to be mutually respectful of another person. We have to be willing sometimes to lay down our own needs for that other person for a time, depending on what's going on in the relationship. And there are many people that are simply not in a place that they can do that, not in a place that they are willing to have the mutuality that is needed for a successful relationship, if that makes sense. So to answer your question, no, I don't think marriage is for everyone. Yes, I do think marriage is beautiful, and it hopefully will be in our future always, because there are many blessings and many gifts that come from that sort of an agreement with another human.
It appears God did not intend marriage to be burdensome. It is a partnership with benefits: companionship, sharing, sex, procreation, helper, burden bearer, associate, co-worker, friend. The list is endless. Yet we experience hardship, conflict, heartbreak. In a nutshell, marital disharmony. How did we get here? We will explore this and more in part 2.